Hello everyone, and welcome to the first official video of Cozy Little Brown House. To kick off my YouTube journey, I decided my first video would be a feature about the last 6 weeks of reading that I had done. So mid-April, I decided I wanted to read nothing but page turners. I was just in the mood for fast-paced reading, the kind of books that would just keep me going at night, tired but not wanting to stop reading because I had to find out what happened next. So I made up a list of like thrillers, mysteries from my Goodreads list, put things on hold at the library, and just checked out a massive stack of books to read. So I'm going to take you through my 6 weeks of page turners, highlighting what was good, what was not so good, and maybe you'll have some new books to put on your summer reading list this year. All right, so to kick things off, first book was The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. And I have read Lucy Foley in the past. I read The Hunting Party, and I also read The Guest List. And this one is my least favorite of the three. And I'm going to be in the minority here because I actually liked The Hunting Party the best. I ended up giving The Paris Apartment 3 stars, and let's talk a little bit about why. Okay, so the premise of The Paris Apartment is there's a young woman named Jess who leaves her job due to some shenanigans that was kind of happening there, and she decides she's going to go stay with her brother Ben at his Paris apartment. Upon arrival, she's kind of wowed by the building, wonders how her brother can afford such a nice place to stay, but as she goes to his apartment, he's nowhere to be found. So the course of the book takes us through Jess's search for Ben, while also getting to know the residents that also live in the apartment, trying to figure out what is happening with them, because there's a lot of things that feel off to her, while also trying to figure out what happened to Ben. And I am a massive fan of locked room mysteries, locked room thrillers, locked room horror. That is like, I hear those words and I'm like on my TBR list, my to be read list. So this one really jumped out at me, and I really like how Lucy Foley does that in her works. This one really missed the mark for me. I should have loved it. The setting was amazing. I liked the idea of this cast of characters at an apartment that might have some things going on in it. But ultimately, and it's so hard to talk about thrillers without spoilers, so this video is going to be vague in a lot of ways, but ultimately the book veered off in a direction that I wasn't expecting. I didn't have a problem with the material per se. It's just not what I was hoping for as I read. So this one for me was just a meh. I preferred her other two books to this one. Next up, I read 9 Lives by Peter Swanson, which I gave 4 stars to on Goodreads. However, I would probably put this more at a 3.5, and I will tell you why at the end of my brief little synopsis here. So 9 Lives also has a plot twist that I also love in my fiction and in my film and television, which is a bunch of strangers connected by something terrible, and we're trying to figure out what that connection is. So in 9 Lives, we have people from all over the country receiving a mysterious letter, and then bad things begin happening to them. So they're found dead. And there is a detective or police officer, I can't remember exactly what her role is, but she's in law enforcement, and she also had received a letter, and now she is trying to solve this mystery of why are all of these people receiving these letters, what is happening to them, who is doing it, before something bad happens to her. So this is, like I said, a premise that I really love. The problem I had with 9 Lives is I should have wanted to pick this one up constantly. Because when I'm going to sit down with a thriller, I want it to distract me from everything else I have going on. And Nine Lives didn't do that for me. You know, I'd put it down, I'd go pick it up later. It wasn't like, I've got to keep reading, I've got to keep reading. It didn't have that for me. And the other problem I have with it now as I'm reflecting upon all of these books I've read for 6 weeks is this one just didn't stay with me. In preparation for this video, I was trying to recall some of the details of this story, and this admittedly happens to me a lot when I read. I do tend to forget a lot of what I read, so I read for more in the moment enjoyment, but this is a big problem for me. But thrillers, the good ones, always stand out for me, and I can always recall, you know, plot points and how I felt reading it. This story, I'm having a hard time remembering a lot of the details. So for that reason, this one would also be an, yeah, it was okay, it was good, but not a standout in my 6 weeks. So 3.5 stars for me. Next was Reckless Girls from Rachel Hawkins, who is a new to me author. But Reckless Girls was my first standout, really enjoyed book of my 6 weeks of page turners. And it's another theme that really grabs me in literature, and that is vacations gone wrong. So I don't care if it's vacations or travel gone wrong in literary fiction or thrillers or horror. It's just something I always gravitate towards. I work in the travel industry. I've been in the travel industry for 10 years. I love travel, and I just really like this theme. Okay, so Reckless Girls. Reckless Girls is the story of couple Lux and Nico who reside in Hawaii. Their life there is not very settled, and Lux has been dealing with a family tragedy that has really affected her life. So they are approached to sail, these 2 young women, paid like charter guests, on an excursion to the isolated Miro Island in the South Pacific. They want to go do all the, you know, the social media pictures and get away to somewhere that's off the beaten path. So Lux and Nico agree to this. So they're going to captain their sailboat and take these 2 young women to this beautiful remote paradise. And they set off. And they get to the island, and they see that there's already another boat there, and there's another couple there. And they become friends with this couple, and they quickly kind of settle into like their daily routine. They're lying on the beach, and they're hanging out, and they're drinking, and they're eating together. So they develop kind of like this nice vibe with this other couple. One day, another person shows up on the island. And this is where things start to go awry for everyone. With the arrival of this person, things get a little bit dicey on the island. And as the reader, we start to learn about secrets between friends and couples. And as a result, a lot of things start happening. And again, this is like a locked room situation since we've got everybody stuck on an island, and you're wondering who gets out of this and where is this going to go. So I just really tore through this one. I really liked the story. I really liked the setting. So for me, this was a solid 4-star read, and now I'm kind of curious to go back and check out The Wife Upstairs by Rachel Hawkins. Up is A Flicker in the Dark, and this is by Stacey Willingham, and I believe this has been picked up for miniseries. Don't quote me on that, but there's a couple that I read that seem like they got optioned. So A Flicker in the Dark tells the story of Chloe Davis, who as a child, teenage girls started disappearing from around her hometown, and ultimately her father was arrested and tried for the crimes and convicted as a serial killer. So she grew up in the aftermath of having her home life completely shaken by the fact that her father was a convicted serial killer. So we fast forward, she's now an established, I believe she's a psychologist. Yeah, she's a psychologist, still nearby, still close to her hometown, and she has tried to move on from her past. She's planning a wedding, she has a successful practice, but that's when girls start going missing again. Forces her to face her past and try to figure out, is there a copycat? It brings about so many questions for her, and she is struggling with how to make sense of her past and her present as they're kind of colliding. I thought this was very good read. I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads, but I thought this was really good. So that's A Flicker in the Dark. Next book is Girl in Ice by Erica Forensic. I believe that's how you pronounce her last name. My apologies. She is an author I've really come to love. Anytime I see something new coming out from her, I immediately put it on hold at the library, put it on my Goodreads to read list. Into the Jungle. Oh, absolutely love it. That was a 5-star read for me, so make sure you check that out by her as well. But Girl in Ice is the story of a linguist named Val who is called to the Arctic Circle when a young girl is discovered in the ice and they begin thawing her out. And Val's specialty is like esoteric, dead Nordic languages. Her purpose in going to the Arctic Circle is to work on communicating with this young girl and trying to learn more about who she is, where she came from, and ultimately, when did she live. Simultaneously with trying to communicate with this girl is she's also trying to figure out what happened to her twin brother, who was a scientist that was also based in the same station where she is heading. He supposedly had committed suicide, but she always questioned that. So she's hoping maybe she can get some answers while she is there. So this was a really interesting story. I think the thing that captured me the most in this book was learning about language and learning a little bit about what she did as a linguist. I found that really interesting, and man, if she would have like really gone even more into that, I would have been all in on that. And I also really liked the Arctic Circle setting. I think when the setting is as terrifying as what else could be going on, I think that can be very powerful. The idea of being in an isolated, remote location with ravaging storms, you know, deadly temperatures, the imposing darkness that falls so early, it just really creates a sense of tension. So this one was a solid 4-star read for me. It was going to be very hard to top Into the Jungle just because I loved that book so much, but she's a must-read author for me. So if this appeals to you, I would definitely check out Girl in Ice, but also add Into the Jungle onto your to-read list. So up next we had I'll Be You by Janelle Brown, who is a new to me author this year. I read Pretty Things about 3 or 4 months ago, and I just thought it was such a great story. She's just a fun storyteller, and when I first heard about this one and that it had maybe some cult ties to it, I was immediately drawn to this. I don't know what that says about me, but I'll Be You is the story of Sam and Ellie. They are identical twins who grew up as child actors, and as adults their paths have veered very different directions. So Ellie has sought out kind of the marriage and family and perfect home, and Sam has struggled. She's kind of floated to small jobs, she's dealt with substance abuse, and the two of them are completely estranged. They just don't have a relationship. But then Ellie goes on a retreat, and she leaves her newly adopted young daughter with their parents, with the girl's grandparents, and takes off, and people can't reach her, and she doesn't contact anyone. And Sam is called in to try to help out with her young daughter, and she becomes very concerned. So the book is Sam trying to figure out where Ellie has gone and what has happened to Ellie. So this was just another fun story. Like I said, Janelle Brown, her books are just fun to read. And this was a solid 4-star read for me. I would highly recommend checking out I'll Be You by Janelle Brown. This was a good one. Next up was Fantastic Land by Mike Brockovin. And I believe I first heard about this particular book from one of my favorite reading podcasts. It's called Books in the Freezer. And I really love the content and the host. Her name is also Stephanie, and she's wonderful. And she does a really great job of presenting horror to people who have never read horror before, or people that are looking to dive deeper into the genre. I have become a big fan of horror because of that podcast, because I have been steered in the right direction for me, and I am not a horror viewer. I don't like scary movies, but I love horror fiction. So I decided to check out Fantastic Land. I thought it would be a fun one to read as spring was transitioning into summer, because it takes place at an amusement park. Fantastic Land is this very well-known family amusement park located in Central Florida. It's been around since the 1970s. Maybe it sounds like another amusement park you're familiar with. And all of the employees there are awaiting this massive hurricane that is about to barrel through Florida. And the employees there have to hunker down and prepare to wait it out. So everybody is stranded. They don't have their cell phones, because one of the rules at Fantastic Land is they need to be locked away. The staff does not have them. And everybody is trapped. The hurricane is incredibly powerful. It completely cuts them off from society. The flooding is really terrible because of the geography of where the park is situated, and help does not come. Okay, so as time progresses following this hurricane, we start to see the groups of individuals, the employees, breaking up into factions, and it becomes a downright battle for survival and resources. So it kind of takes on like a Lord of the Flies type vibe. As a result, I will tell you there are some very gory descriptions of things in this book. The atrocities that regular, completely normal human beings do unto others in this book as a result of their situation is the hot topic. So if you're a little bit squeamish, I would not recommend this. But the other thing that makes this story interesting is it's told through a series of interviews with all of the different employees that were there and part of this nightmare that unfolded at Fantastic Land. Like audio, this might be a good one to check out for audio. So Fantastic Land, I really liked this. I think this would be so fun for summer if you are interested in dabbling in some horror, thriller horror, just because of its setting. That amusement park setting is really fun. An ebook, I read Shadow House by Anna Downs. I have read her before. I believe she had a book called The Safe Place, and I liked that one quite a bit when I read it. Unfortunately for me, this was a 2-star read, and I will tell you why as we go along here. But first, the synopsis. So we meet Alex. She is a single mother. She has a teenage son and a very young daughter. I think she was like maybe 1.5-ish. And she is seeking to give them a better life. She had a not so good relationship she's trying to get away from, and she seeks refuge at a community called Pine Ridge. And Pine Ridge is this beautiful community on a hillside, lush forests. They're really focused on like they're eco-friendly, and you know, they garden and they eat healthy, and he really loves the idea of being among this set community, this group of people. But as they are starting to get settled, there's some weird things that start happening. She's left some weird gifts, we'll call them gifts, at her house, that have kind of a threatening tone to them, an ominous tone. And she's trying to figure out what is going on in this little community, and if her family's in danger, and how does she keep her son safe. So that's kind of the premise. What I had a problem with in this particular book might just fall on me as the reader. So as I started reading, I really thought the book was going to go in one direction. Again, it's hard to talk about this without spoilers, but I thought the book was going to go in a certain direction. And then I realized partway through that it was not going in that direction, and I was bummed out. And then I thought it was going in another direction, and it didn't do that either. And what I was ultimately left with was a story that was not fulfilling to me. I kept reading this one. I have no problems DNFing a book. It kept me enough that I wanted to finish to the end, but this was a disappointment, especially since I did really like her previous book, which was kind of in the same vein, like a light thriller mystery. So Shadow House, this one was a miss for me. 2 stars on Goodreads. Unfortunately, my next book is another 2-star meh rating. This was, out of all of the books I've read over the last 6 weeks, I believe this is the one that had the lowest rating on Goodreads. But I was captivated enough by the description in the book jacket that I decided to read it anyway. And that is The Long Weekend by Gilly McMillan. And the premise here is 3 couples, 2 bodies, 1 secret. So very intriguing. And The Long Weekend is about a group of friends that is going to go spend a long weekend together at Darkfell Barn, which is another isolated, remote setting where people are going for some peace and quiet to get away together, but then things just don't go as they're supposed to go. So the men are held back. The husbands are held back for different reasons, and 3 of the women venture off to Darkfell Barn together. And upon arrival, they have a little gift with a note waiting for them. And this is all, you will know this all ahead of time. But they find out that one of the husbands is going to be murdered. And that's what kind of kicks off this weekend. So you have these 3 friends, which I don't even know how these women are spending time together. They seem like they have nothing in common. This was one of the things that I had a problem with in this book, is I just didn't believe any of these people would spend time together. So if the premise of the book is going to be everybody going to spend time together, I need to feel like they actually have a connection. And granted, it's the husbands that are more connected than the wives are, but I don't know, that really contributed to, I think, some of my problems with the book. So they're trying to get out of Darkfell Barn to get home and figure out what's going on home, and they start to learn about what's been going on. And this book, just the further I read, I probably, and I came very close to DNFing this one. The problem I had with this is I kept reading, and I realized who each of these people meant to the other and how this story was going to end. I just was not into any of it. So The Long Weekend was a big miss for me. Okay. Next up is The Death of Mrs Westaway by Ruth Ware, an author I have read and really enjoyed. I haven't read all of her books, But I've liked everything I've read from her. I read The Woman in Cabin 10. I read The Lying Game. I read One by One. I think I've just read those 3. And now The Death of Mrs Westaway. So what really appealed to me about this book is the setting. I love like the mysterious manner. And we have a young woman who is called back to her family's ancestral home, and is getting to know family that she didn't know she had. So we kind of have mysterious family, mysterious manor, mysterious circumstances. All of that spoke to me very much. So Hal is our protagonist in the story, and she is a fortune teller down by the pier and struggling to make ends meet. She has money due to various lenders, and her life is, she's really struggling. Her life is not great, and she receives a letter in the mail that she is to receive an inheritance. But she quickly realizes that that's a mistake, and there's a case of mistaken identity. But she goes, and then what unfolds is her getting to know the family and the manor and finding out that her family situation isn't exactly what she thought it was. So these truths are coming out. So that said, this one really missed the mark for me. I can't even pinpoint why. This should have been a book that I loved. But it took me forever to read this. This was one of the first books I started in the 6 weeks, and I was kind of reading it in the background for almost a month of that time. It just felt really drawn out and long, and yes, it's definitely more mystery than thriller. This was not a page turner. So this was my least favorite of Ruth Ware's books that I've read so far. So The Death of Mrs Westaway. This was a 3-star read for me. The book of 6 weeks of page turners was a high note. The Island by Adrienne McKinty was a solid 4-star read for me. I had previously read The Chain by this author. I didn't love it like a lot of people did, but The Island I thought was incredibly fast-paced, a lot of fun, and I couldn't put this book down. So The Island tells the story of Heather and Tom. They're a recently married couple. Tom had lost his wife in a tragic accident, and Heather is struggling to connect with Tom's 2 children. So when Tom is called to Australia for a conference, a medical conference, she decides to go with him, bring the children, and make the trip a chance for them to bond and connect and really sort of establish themselves as a family. While they are there, they decide to pay some locals to visit the island they inhabit. It's a very small, remote island. It doesn't welcome tourists. Like I said, it's just a large, extended family that resides there. And they get over to this island. They're joined by a Dutch couple. So it's the family of 4 and then a Dutch couple. And Tom strikes and kills one of the inhabitants of the island with their rental vehicle. And what ensues is a battle of revenge, right? Because the inhabitants are not thrilled that he killed one of their family members. So it becomes a battle of survival. The family and the Dutch couple against the people that live on this island. So we have vacation gone wrong. We have a locked room situation, everybody trapped on this island together with no means of escape. And you have a battle of wits, which just made for some really great page turning. To wrap up today's video, I'm going to pop up on the screen a ranking of everything I read in the last 6 weeks from favorite to least favorite, so you can really target which books you might want to add to your reading list. And also in the comments below, I would love it if you would first share with me if you have read anything that I shared with you in this video, And also, let me know if there's any great page turners you would recommend. What kept you up reading late at night when you should have been sleeping? So thank you for spending some time with me today. If you liked this video, and really they can only get better from here, right? It's the first one. I would recommend subscribing and giving this a like. And thank you so much for joining me today. Have a wonderful day full of great things that make you happy, and of course, great reading. See you next time.